In this video, a gentleman is bringing his Humber Super Snipe Series 2, similar to my car, to me to give it a once-over. Now, we first met a few years ago at the Post Vintage Humber Car Club, or PVHCC, to give it its abbreviated name, International Rally. The gentleman expressed an interest as to my technical knowledge. He asked my opinion on several matters regarding the cars of general running, faults, etc., and maintenance. And we exchanged details, but he always expressed a desire for me to give his car a once over and try and bring it up to a better state of tune. Well, that is the subject of this video, so we will proceed to the main event where I can introduce this gentleman and his wonderful original car.
This Humber Super Snipe 424 PFM was bought new by my father from Anchor Motors in Chester in 1960. And it was his pride and joy. He used to take my mother to Sidmouth on holidays, but he died in 1969 and it had done 33,000 miles. So my sister had the Hillman Super Minx and I had the Humber Super Snipe, and my wife learned to drive on it, and she took the children to school in it, and she crashed it in Houghton Road in 1978, and the front was all buckled up and we couldn't renew the chromium grille at that time because it was 18 years old. So the car was laid up more or less for 40 years. Eventually we dug it out in 2016 and it's had new wheel arches, new sills, outer and out inner.
Very good too.
And a complete respray. The only original paint is on the roof, and so it's running remarkably well now, having been, as it were, worked upon by Peter Tanulak at Middlewood Garage, north of Shrewsbury, and now my good friend Josh Dawson has given it an excellent tune-up. So let's hope it'll run home to Cheshire in good form.
Hello. Parts were even hard to find in 1978 for the chrome.
Oh yes, unavailable.
Unavailable. And how old are you now?
83.
And this has been in your family since
63 years.
60. That's it, amazing. Yeah. So this is a one family car from you, and you're effectively the second owner.
Oh yes.
Effectively.
That's absolutely true. Correct.
Well, I must say it is a credit to you, and well, we're both members of the Post Vintage Humber Car Club, and that is how we were introduced, really, at one of the national rallies. So, yeah.
The chairman is Chaz Thompson, and I still can't think of Mike's surname, but he's a very good chap.
He is. Right, well, we shall push on then.
We shall.
Brian,
yes,
I'm going to do a bit of work on your car now.
Right.
I'm going to ask you a question which you must have asked countless people in your occupation as a GP. What are the symptoms
of
the faults with this car?
Oh, well, it's noisier than it was when it was new, particularly at 50 miles an hour, 3,000 revs and odd. And it's the exhaust. The question is, should I have a new exhaust? Overall, the car's been running rather better now than when we first got it out from being laid up for as much as 20 years. It was first, my wife crashed it in 1978, and it was only doing 19 miles to the gallon, and she wanted a car for running the children to school. So we laid this up in my mother's garage, and it stayed there till 1990, and then she wanted it shifted, so I actually took it to a place called Clyde near Wrexham, thinking to get it refurbished, but in fact I was a bit short of cash at the time. It was never done, and the man there, he got fed up. He put it on a transporter with chains from one end to the other and dumped it at my house. And so that's where the car was laid up for the next 20 years.
Right.
In fact, I used it for 1 week in my medical practice in 1995, and then it seemed to be more or less as good as it had been. But by 2016, the clutch had failed, and shortly after we found the petrol pump needed to refurbish. But bit by bit, well, in fact, it wouldn't pass the MOT because there was so much rust on it. And so eventually, this chap called Mike, I really can't remember his surname now, and he said, well, I recommend Middlewood Garage north of Shrewsbury.
Right.
And so he said, well, we'll start on it, we'll make it pass the MOT. Well, that meant new sills, new wheel arches, and effectively a respray, everything except the roof, and a lot of welding here and there. But overall they did what I would say is a very serviceable job.
Yeah.
Not absolutely perfect.
No. But it looks very nice. What was the car that replaced it for the school run there?
Just a Morris Arena 1.3 coupe.
Now we're going left, just next left under the arches here, under the viaduct.
I shall have to look all this up on the map because Richard Hoff will be very interested. Back up road.
Yeah, bake up in local dialect. That many people call Todmorden.
And that was 4,000 revs in first gear, if you're interested. And it seemed to me smooth enough.
It is smooth, yeah. But you can, first gear really, I mean the engines are so torquey and strong, you only need first gear really just to get moving. I mean we're now in top, it'll pull, if you can put your foot down here and it'll go, because this will open up to quite a fast road. So we're on our way to Martin's unit. He's still incapacitated, but I'm sure after Brian has asked me to look over the car, and I'm sure I can effect some improvement to it and at least give it my honest appraisal. But so far, no, it seems very good, and it's, I must say, I am enjoying being a passenger, being driven in one for a change and not doing the driving, because it is very, very comfortable and luxurious.
Well, and yet the suspension when you're on a bumpy road is not that great. I was going to tell you how in 1970 my wife was learning to drive, and we were in Scotland heading up Glenshee. From Blairgowrie goes over to Balmoral, Ballater, and you have to negotiate the devil's elbow in those days. And Renata was driving, and I didn't tell her to stop. I said, just be careful, you've got the devil's elbow now. And she slipped it into second gear, and it's 1 in 4, and she was up in a flash and over the top, and I thought to myself, well, she's bound to pass her test now.
Once you get round this bend, you can put your foot down as the road straightens. I generally come up here at the limit in mine.
You see, there's a slight unevenness in the engine at this speed. Can you hear it?
Slightly, but it's barely discernible. I don't think this car has any issue.
Fault.
No, not at all. No. But I'll go through the essentials.
Yep.
Check valve clearances,
Well,
spark
that's
plugs, contact
As
breaker
long as
gap.
we don't overdo it.
We won't overdo it. And then the last thing, of course, will be the ignition timing. So I'll have a look. So I've got the car, Dr. Brian's car, up at Martin's unit because the weather has turned against us for the worst, and I'm not working outdoors, not in the rain. I do enough of that. So what have we done? What have I done? Well, really, it was just a thorough tune-up and service, really. I found a couple of things wrong, such as valve clearances a little on the slack side. They must be set with the engine hot, which was fine because the car's run up here. I've done a video of that on my own car. That's in my back catalogue if you're interested. Spark plugs, they were all quite, well, not loose but not tight, if you get my drift, in the holes there. So as part of the service, I gapped the plugs, cleaned them, and
One plug
and
was
put them in.
particularly loose with oil on it.
Oil on the threads, which
Yes.
it can be, it can often happen, but when you were complaining of this slight misfire, they need to be gas tight, of course.
Just make the difference.
Distributor, we've put a new set, well, I've put a new set of points in supplied by Brian, because the old set, I couldn't get the adjustments on them. Points gap is 14 to 16 thousandths of an inch, so I always set them at 15 because there's just the one feeler gauge then needed. So this is a new set that have been put in.
Hopefully correct for the car.
Aye, they will be. You see, they're nowhere near the limit of adjustment there, so that's good. I've had a look at his distributor cap, nice and clean. Carbon brushes moving freely. This particular car has the wrong spark plug HT leads, but they work. It's not an issue really.
Ooh.
Carburetor you didn't want touching, but it's fine anyway. Accelerator pump is working. Everything's nice and tight. I've oiled all the linkages there, checked clutch fluid. Brake master cylinder's a later replacement with a transparent reservoir, that's fine. Bonnet hinges have been oiled, and the bonnet catch, something which is often overlooked, along with the dynamo rear bearing. So now
It should be.
Yeah.
A1 at Lloyd's.
it should be, but I did say, because you're a doctor, this engine sludge is like clogged arteries. So yes, it does want a thorough clean at the top end.
The question
It really
then
does.
is it throwing enough oil at the valves, and is the oil draining back into the sump as it should?
It will be, because they've got massive drain holes here,
Yes.
and it was one at the
So
rear.
So long as it's functional,
It's functional.
a little bit of grime doesn't matter too much.
Not really, but cleanliness is next to godliness. But-
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah. I'll pop the HC leads back on and we'll fire it up.
Right.
So Brian's going to fire it up, and I'm just going to observe specifically for any oil leaks. These engines are right. The oil feed to the rockers, it comes up from the rear and along the front. Now the copper washers, there are only 2 of them, and they have to seal the end rocker standards, you see. And I can tell you, looking at this now, it's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's all as it should be, yeah. Because if the copper washers weren't in place, the oil would be peeing out, squirting out. What have we got pressure-wise? Be about 50, won't it?
Oil pressure?
Oil pressure,
Oh, it's
yeah.
absolutely plumb.
Yeah,
always on 50.
Yeah, you got 50 there. Yeah. Give it a rev, Brian. Go on, give it some. Yeah, faster.
Engine off.
I've got to do the timing yet. Now the other adjustments have been made. The work has been done, and we're in top gear, pulling up quite a steep hill really, but they always were good pullers, these 3 litre engines, because they just have loads of torque, so they always pulled well in top gear uphill. But you think it's pulling a bit better, Brian? You think it's better?
Well, maybe, yes.
It certainly can't be any worse.
Just come up a steep one there.
The oil pressure reading is very, very good. I mean, book figure is 45 to 50 pounds per square inch, and yours appears to be about 55, or maybe 50. About 50. Bob on 50, yeah, so that's fine. It's just a pity the weather turned against us, because it's now pouring it down, typical Pennine weather. This is a sharp one. Well, it's not caught me out, but I felt in wet weather the cross-ply tyres going.
Kind in anticipating for my benefit.
Yeah. Well, I know these roads, and in wet weather, whatever car you're in, really, you've got to take. It's one of them where paradoxically you can come uphill faster than you can go down it. But it sounds a bit better and a bit more livelier, you reckon?
I thought so, yes.
Good. I hadn't been able to effect miracles improving the smoothness, but you can't always. But it's certainly no worse than it was, and it should run very well now. The settings, all the valve clearances, points gap, etc., spark plug gaps are all back to specification. So I think we can call that a success. Oh yeah, I slightly adjusted the ignition timing, but it was pretty much as it should have been anyway.
Would you say it's now slightly more advanced than it was?
I would, just a little.
Yes.
Just a little. I do it by ear and road test because the static timing with the strobe lights on the crankshaft pulley, that was a benchmark for setting up from scratch after you'd rebuilt an engine, so you could get all the timing wheels and gears, the distributor drive, so you had a reference point. And not only that, now modern fuels, petrol has changed drastically from the settings they put these cars at, and even in the old handbooks it says ignition timing should be optimized by a series of road tests and a stopwatch. Well, I'm not going to such lengths. I just set it by ear, and also how it sounds on the starter motor when cold. If the engine sort of struggles against the starter motor, you know it's over advanced, so you back it off a bit. But yeah, I'd say it's been a success. So we're now, I'm quite thirsty, and I suppose we should toast this success with beer, which is what we're going to do. That's fine.
I think I'm going to get the umbrella.
I'm going to get my coat as well. We must toast our success, so cheers.
Cheerio.
Cheers. Yes, indeed. It was a good success. Cheers.
I think the car was running smoother as we went along.
I do. And this is running smoother too.